The cardboard box arrived on my doorstep 3 days after Margaret's funeral, wrapped in brown paper and tied with kitchen twine, the same twine she'd used to truss countless Thanksgiving turkeys over the years. My hands trembled as I cut through it, though I already knew what I'd find inside. The recipe cards. All of them. 180 small rectangles of cream-colored cardstock that had arrived in my mailbox on the first Tuesday of every month for 15 years, each one bearing Margaret's precise, looping handwriting on the front and what I'd always assumed was blank space on the back. I'd never turned them over. Not once. Not in all those years. Welcome to Big Sky Storytime. I hope you will like this story. Before listening to the story, I request you that if you have not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe to my channel and make the video a worthy one. Let's go to the story. Margaret had started sending the recipes in January 2008, about 6 months after I married her younger brother, David. The first one was for her famous peach cobbler, the dessert she'd brought to our wedding rehearsal dinner. Every new bride needs a signature dessert, the accompanying note had read. This one's foolproof. Love, Margaret. I'd been charmed by the gesture, tickled by the old-fashioned formality of a handwritten recipe card when Pinterest and food blogs were already taking over the world. I made the cobbler that weekend, and it was indeed foolproof. The peaches swimming in buttery, cinnamon-laced syrup beneath a golden lattice crust that shattered perfectly under my fork. The second card arrived in February, beef bourguignon, a recipe Margaret said had been passed down from our husband's French grandmother. Then came cards for Irish soda bread, lemon bars, chicken paprishka, and on, an unbroken chain of culinary instruction that continued through my pregnancy with twins, David's promotion and subsequent burnout, my mother's cancer diagnosis, our move from Seattle to Portland, Margaret's own divorce, and every small joy and quiet devastation in between. The cards kept coming with metronomic regularity, a constant in an inconstant world. I kept them all in a wooden recipe box David had made for me in his brief woodworking phase, organized chronologically because I couldn't bear to alphabetize them and lose the narrative thread of Margaret's selections. I cooked from them often, maybe a third of the recipes becoming regular fixtures in our rotation. David always knew when I'd made one of Margaret's dishes, not because the food tasted like his childhood, though sometimes it did, but because those meals carried an extra weight of intention, of connection to someone who'd chosen to tie us together with flour and butter and time. Margaret had been 53 when she died, a brain aneurysm as sudden and senseless as a door slamming in an empty house. One moment, she was laughing at her book club, sipping wine and debating the merits of unreliable narrators, and the next, she was gone, collapsed between the fiction shelves and the coffee table, her wine glass somehow still intact in her hand. David had gotten the call while we were at a parent-teacher conference for our son, Jake, who was struggling with algebra and friend dynamics in that particular hell that is 7th grade. I watched my husband's face hollow out as his older sister's husband, her ex-husband technically, though they'd stayed close, delivered the news in a voice that sounded like it was coming from underwater. The funeral had been enormous. St. Matthew's Episcopal, packed with colleagues from the library where Margaret had worked for 27 years. Former students from her literacy tutoring, neighbors, friends, and people I'd never met who stood up to tell stories about Margaret's generosity, her wicked sense of humor, her ability to remember everyone's birthday and the specific way they took their coffee. David delivered a eulogy that reduced the entire congregation to tears, talking about how Margaret had raised him after their mother died, how she'd been more parent than sister, how she'd taught him to drive and balance a checkbook, and understand that being a good man meant showing up even when it was hard. I'd cried through the whole thing, grief mixing with something sharper and more complicated. Margaret and I had never been close, not really. We were friendly, affectionate in that holiday hug, how are the kids sort of way, but there was always a distance between us that neither of us seemed inclined to cross. She'd been protective of David in a way that made me feel perpetually auditioned during our engagement, though she'd warmed considerably after the twins were born. Still, we never progressed to the kind of sister-in-law relationship I'd imagined. No wine-soaked late-night confessions, no shopping trips or inside jokes, just pleasant conversation at family gatherings and those monthly recipe cards, which I'd come to view as Margaret's way of maintaining connection without demanding intimacy, a perfect solution for two women who respected each other but didn't quite know how to be friends. The box sat on my kitchen counter for a week after it arrived, and I circled it like a wary cat. David had returned to work with the grim determination of someone who needed structure to survive grief. And the twins, now 15 and obsessed with their phones and friend dramas, treated the house like a hotel. I found myself alone most days, supposedly working on the freelance marketing projects that paid our mortgage, but actually staring at that box and wondering why my hands went cold every time I thought about opening it. I knew there was something on the backs of those cards. The thought had occurred to me before, casually, but I'd never investigated. Recipe cards were single-purpose objects in my mind. You wrote the recipe on the front and left the back blank. Besides, I'd been so focused on the recipes themselves, on mastering Margaret's technique for pie crust, on understanding why she insisted on whole nutmeg for bechamel sauce, that it had never occurred to me to look for hidden dimensions. But the twine around that box, so deliberately tied, so carefully chosen, felt like an instruction. Look closer. Pay attention. There's more. On a Thursday morning in October, after David left for work and the twins caught their bus, I made myself a cup of the expensive Earl Grey tea I saved for bad days, sat down at the kitchen table, and opened the box. The cards were exactly as I'd left them, organized by date, each one a small monument to a month of my life. I picked up the first card, the peach cobbler from January 2008, and turned it over. Margaret's handwriting covered the back in the same careful script she'd used for the recipe. "Dear Kate," it began, "I'm starting this project today, though I don't know if you'll ever read these words. Maybe you'll turn the cards over right away, or maybe you'll wait years, or maybe you'll never look at all. That's okay. I'm writing them anyway, because I need to tell you things I don't know how to say out loud, and because I think you might need to hear them someday, even if that someday is after I'm gone." My tea went cold as I read. The back of that first card contained no earth-shaking revelations, just Margaret explaining that she'd chosen peach cobbler because it was forgiving, because it had saved her from embarrassment at a dozen potlucks when she was a young, uncertain cook, because she wanted me to have something reliable in my arsenal. "Being David's wife won't always be easy," she wrote. "He's wonderful, but he's also stubborn and he holds grudges, and sometimes he disappears into his own head for days at a time. You'll need patience and good desserts. This recipe has both." I laughed out loud, a startled sound in my empty kitchen. She was right. David did all those things, and I had needed patience, though I'd never connected it to the cobbler I'd made dozens of times over the years, the dessert that had smoothed over arguments and celebrated promotions and provided comfort after hard days. The second card's reverse contained Margaret's reflections on February 2008, on watching David and me settle into married life. "You looked tired at Sunday dinner," she'd written. "Marriage is exhausting at the beginning, all that negotiation about whose way is the right way to load the dishwasher and whether breakfast is a real meal or just coffee grabbed on the way out the door. The beef bourguignon takes time. It's not a quick Wednesday night dinner, but the slow cooking teaches you something about patience, about how good things can't be rushed, I hope when you make this, you'll remember that building a life together is also slow cooking. It smells terrible for the first hour, all that wine and onions, but then it transforms into something sublime. I moved through the cards chronologically, reading the backs one after another, and Margaret's life unspooled before me in monthly installments. March 2008. I'm thinking about leaving Robert. Don't tell David yet. The soda bread is what my mother made when she was sad. Something about kneading the dough helps. April. I told Robert today. He cried, I cried. Everything is awful. These lemon bars are what happiness tastes like. Make them and remember that sweetness exists. May. You're pregnant. David called me at work, shouting into the phone like a beautiful fool. The paprikash is protein-rich, good for growing babies. Also, it's what our grandmother made when she was joyful. Celebration food. The cards became a parallel diary, Margaret's interior life running alongside my own, like a companion track I'd never known existed. She wrote about her divorce with wrenching honesty, the loneliness of her suddenly empty house, the relief of no longer performing happiness, the strange freedom of answering only to herself. She wrote about her work at the library, about the teen boy who came in every day after school to use the computers, and how she'd gradually learned he was homeless, how she'd started forgetting sandwiches in the break room where he could find them. She wrote about her book club, about her aging father, about the mastectomy scare that turned out to be nothing but had left her shaken for months. And she wrote about me, about watching me navigate early motherhood with twins, about how she'd wanted to help more but didn't want to intrude, about how she saw me struggling to balance work and babies and marriage, and how she wished she could tell me that it was okay to not be perfect, that survival counted as success. The casserole I'm sending this month is designed to be made ahead and frozen, she wrote in August 2008. You look exhausted, Kate. I wish I could tell you it gets easier, but really, you just get stronger. Make 6 of these at once and freeze them. Future you will be grateful. I had made those casseroles. I'd been grateful. The cards from 2009 and 2010 chronicled the twins' toddler years and Margaret's growing contentment with single life. She'd started dating again, tentatively, and wrote with bemused affection about the widower who took her to dinner and talked about his late wife the entire time, about the divorced accountant who was nice enough but kissed like a trout. The tiramisu I'm sending you is romance in dessert form, she wrote in February 2010. It's sophisticated and a little boozy and absolutely worth the effort, even though you'll be tempted to cut corners. Don't. Some things require the full ritual. I'm trying to remember that about dating. In June 2011, she wrote about David's burnout, about how their father had worked himself into an early grave, and she was terrified of watching David do the same. He won't listen to me. I'm his sister, what do I know? But he might listen to you. The gazpacho is cold soup for hot days. It's also what I make when I'm worried because the knife work keeps my hands busy. Talk to him, Kate. Make him slow down. I remembered that conversation with David, how I'd finally convinced him to see a therapist, how he'd cut back his hours and started exercising and slowly come back to himself. I'd thought it was my own observation that prompted my intervention, but Margaret had seen it first, had tried to equip me with what I needed to help him. The cards from 2012 through 2015 were densest, Margaret's writing smaller to fit more words on each card's back. She'd fallen in love with a woman named Sandra, a development that surprised her more than anyone. I'm 41 years old and just now figuring out that I like women, she wrote in April 2013. The baklava is a celebration of sweetness and layers and things that are worth the complicated process. Sandra is worth it.
Everything is different now. She wrote about coming out to David, about his fumbling but genuine support, about their father's more complicated reaction. She wrote about moving in with Sandra, about the particular joy of building a life with someone who actually understood her, about feeling like she'd been holding her breath for 40 years and had finally exhaled.
There were cards about your mother's cancer diagnosis in 2014, about Margaret's helpless rage at the unfairness of it, about making chicken soup that couldn't cure anything but provided comfort anyway. Cards about my mother's remission in 2015, about hope and gratitude, and the chocolate cake that Margaret said her own mother had made for every important occasion. "Make this for your mom," she wrote. "Tell her you love her. Tell her often. You never know when the last time will be the last time." The cards from 2016 onward grew more philosophical. Margaret wrote about mortality, about what it meant to live a good life, about her work with literacy students and how teaching someone to read felt like giving them a key to a locked room. She wrote about the twins growing up, about how she watched Jake struggle with anxiety and Emma armor herself in sarcasm and wished she could protect them from the hard work of becoming people. She wrote about making peace with childlessness, about how she'd wanted kids when she was married to Robert, but now felt grateful for the freedom to define her life differently. In December 2019, she wrote about Sandra's death from ovarian cancer, a loss I'd known about but hadn't understood the full weight of. "The rum cake is what Sandra loved at Christmas," Margaret had written. "I can barely stand to make it, but I'm sending you the recipe because someone should make it. Someone should remember that she existed and loved this specific combination of butter and sugar and dark rum. I don't know how to survive this, Kate. I don't know how to be a person without her." I'd sent flowers after Sandra's death. I'd called Margaret and said the useless things people say. I'd invited her to Thanksgiving, but she'd declined, said she needed time alone. I hadn't pushed. I hadn't known how to help, so I'd done nothing. And now I saw that Margaret had been drowning while I stood on the shore making sympathetic noises. The cards from 2020 through 2023 were written by a different Margaret, someone who'd been reshaped by grief. Her writing grew sparer, more essential. She wrote about loneliness, about learning to cook for one, about the strange betrayal of continuing to exist when someone you loved was gone. She wrote about therapy, about medication, about the slow, unglamorous work of not giving up. The recipes from this period were simpler: roasted chicken, pasta with butter and Parmesan, scrambled eggs done properly. "Sometimes you just need to feed yourself," she wrote in March 2021. "That's enough. You don't have to make it meaningful or beautiful. Just eat something good and keep going." Gradually, slowly, the cards began to lighten again. Margaret wrote about grief becoming something she carried rather than something that carried her. She wrote about returning to book club, about taking up watercolor painting, about the small pleasures of her life alone: morning coffee on her porch, library story time with toddlers, her neighbor's ridiculous cat who came to visit every evening. She wrote about watching David and me navigate the twins' teenage years, about how proud she was of the family we'd built. The last year of cards felt like a summation. Margaret wrote about being 53 and feeling both old and young, about having lived enough to know what mattered, but not so much that she'd stopped being surprised. She wrote about gratitude for her brother, for her friendships, for work that felt meaningful, for having loved Sandra, even though losing her had nearly destroyed her. "The pain was worth it," she wrote in September 2023. "I'd choose her again, knowing how it ended. Love is always worth it." The final card, October 2023, sent just 3 weeks before she died, contained a recipe for her mother's apple pie, the dessert Margaret made for every important occasion. On the back, she'd written, "Dear Kate, if you're reading this, I'm probably gone. I hope I went peacefully, but knowing my luck, it was probably something undignified and sudden. If I died while exercising, please lie and tell people it happened while I was reading a very sexy novel." I laughed through tears, and she continued, "I've been writing these cards for 15 years, and I've never told you I was writing on the backs. I kept meaning to mention it, but somehow it felt important to let them accumulate, to wait for the right moment. Maybe you found them immediately, maybe it took you decades. Either way, I hope these words have given you something, a glimpse of my life, a sense of connection, proof that I was paying attention to yours. You and I were never quite friends, Kate, and I think we both felt bad about that. You married my brother, and I wanted to love you like a sister, but the truth is, you can't force intimacy. What we had instead was this, a long conversation conducted through recipes and the private thoughts I wrote on their backs. It was enough. It was its own kind of love. Here's what I want you to know. You've been a good wife to David. Not perfect, nobody's perfect, but good. Patient with his moods, supportive of his dreams, willing to call him on his bullshit when necessary. You've been a good mother to Jake and Emma, even when they're making it hard, which is most of the time because teenagers are professionally difficult. You've survived loss and stress and the regular grinding difficulty of being alive, and you've done it with more grace than you probably give yourself credit for. I chose recipes as my medium because food is how I know to show love. Every card I sent was me saying, "I see you, I'm thinking of you. Here's something to nourish you." I hope you felt that, even when you didn't read these backs. Make the apple pie. Make it for Thanksgiving, or for Tuesday, or for no reason at all. Teach Emmer how to make the crust. She'll pretend not to care, but she will. Teach Jake too, if he's willing. Pass these recipes on. Keep them alive. Thank you for loving my brother. Thank you for making him happy. Thank you for making these recipes, for letting me feed you from a distance, for being part of my life, even when we didn't quite know how to be part of each other's. All my love, Margaret. I sat at my kitchen table until the afternoon light slanted golden through the windows, reading and rereading those cards, watching Margaret's life unspool in reverse as I worked backward from October to January, from death toward beginning. I saw now that she'd been writing me love letters disguised as recipes, that every card had been an offering, that we'd had a friendship after all, unconventional, mediated through food and ink, but real. When David came home that evening, I showed him the cards. We sat together at the kitchen table, reading them aloud in chronological order, and I watched my husband discover dimensions of his sister he'd never known. She'd protected him from her darkest struggles with Sandra's death, had hidden the full extent of her loneliness, had made herself smaller in his presence because she wanted to be his strong older sister, not his burden. He cried reading her words, and I held him while he grieved, not just for Margaret's death, but for the conversations they'd never had, for the ways they'd loved each other around the edges of what they couldn't say. That weekend, I taught Emma how to make apple pie. She complained about the butter being too cold and the dough being too sticky, but she stuck with it. And when we pulled the pie from the oven, golden and perfect, filling bubbling through the lattice, she took a picture and posted it to Instagram with the caption, "Great Aunt Margaret's recipe." She was cool. Jake ate 3 pieces and asked if we could make it again next week. I've been cooking my way through Margaret's recipes again, but differently now. I read the backs before I start, letting her words settle into me before I measure flour or chop onions. I'm teaching myself to see the recipes as she meant them, not just instructions for food, but instructions for living. The slow-cooked dishes about patience, the complicated baked goods about persistence,
the simple, nourishing meals about survival, the celebration foods about joy. I've started my own tradition with Emma and Jake. On the first Tuesday of every month, we cook one of Margaret's recipes together. They grumble about it sometimes, especially when it conflicts with their social lives, but they show up. We talk while we cook about Margaret, about Sandra, about the family history they barely knew. Emma admitted she wants to be a chef, something she'd been hiding because she thought we wanted her to go to college. Jake told us he's been seeing a therapist for his anxiety, something he'd started on his own without telling us. These conversations happen over chopped vegetables and whisked eggs, our hands busy while our hearts open. I've been writing my own messages on recipe cards, creating a box for each of my children. I don't know if they'll read the backs now or later or ever, but I'm writing them anyway. I'm telling them about this year, about losing Margaret and discovering her letters, about how love can be quiet and patient and still be profound. I'm telling them about their father, about the ways marriage is both harder and simpler than I expected. I'm telling them about themselves, the people they are now, the people I hope they'll become. Last Tuesday, I made Margaret's peach cobbler, the first recipe she'd sent me, the one that started everything. David and the twins and I ate it warm with vanilla ice cream, and it tasted like summer and possibility and 15 years of accumulated affection. The recipe was foolproof, just like Margaret had promised. But the real recipe, the one she'd been teaching me all along, was about something bigger than dessert. It was about showing up consistently, about finding ways to connect even across distance or difference, about the patient, persistent work of loving people.
I keep Margaret's box on my kitchen counter now, and sometimes I pull out a random card and read both sides, letting her voice speak to me across the border of death. The recipes still work, the food still nourishes, and the words she wrote still teach me how to live with more intention, more awareness, more willingness to say the true things even when they're hard. Every first Tuesday, when I cook one of Margaret's dishes, I imagine her in her kitchen writing these cards, choosing recipes that matched what she thought I needed, pouring her interior life onto the backs of cream-colored cardstock. I imagine her tying that box with kitchen twine, trusting that someday I'd be ready to receive not just her recipes, but her whole self, offered in installments across 15 years. She was right about the peach cobbler. It was foolproof. But she was also right about everything else, about patience and persistence, about love being worth the pain, about the importance of feeding yourself and the people you love, about how small gestures accumulate into something profound. I miss her. I wish I'd read the backs of those cards while she was alive. Wish I'd known how to bridge the distance between us. Wish I'd understood that she'd been showing me her heart all along, and I'd just been too focused on the recipes to notice. But I'm grateful too, for the cards, for the meals, for the long conversation we had across time and silence. It was enough. It was its own kind of love. And on the first Tuesday of every month, I cook one of her recipes, and I remember. If you like this story of mine, please leave a nice comment, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you.